Now, I would like to go ahead and transition us to our next portion of the webinar, which is a interview with Dr. Haixun Wang, who is here with us today. Thank you for coming, Dr. Wang. So Dr. Wang is an ACM Fellow and IEEE Fellow with an extensive background leading AI, NLP, and applied science teams at companies like Instacart, Amazon, Meta, and Microsoft. He is currently the VP of Engineering and Head of AI at EvenUp, where he works at the intersection of AI, legal tech, and real-world product impact. Dr. Wang has also published over 200 research papers and received numerous prestigious awards in the field of data engineering and machine learning. Dr. Wang, thank you for joining us today for the PEAAI and the ACES Collaborative webinar. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So how about we wait 2 more minutes because we announced Dr. Wang's session will start at 2 p.m. sharp, right? So
yes.
Yeah, may I take the advantage of these 2 minutes? Dr. Wang, I think you are the very rare case that can be do really well in academia and also in the industry. So may I ask, when you were young, did you plan to do something like this? Kind of like, on both pathways, you have done really well, or this is you kind of like get this career path by accident?
Well, I would say it's totally by accident. When I graduated from UCLA after I got my PhD, at that time I really wanted to continue doing research. I was thinking about academia jobs. I was also thinking about research labs in industry research labs, and eventually I joined the industry research labs, and I spent I think almost 15 years in research labs, IBM, Microsoft, Google, before I really jumped into leading some engineering work in those companies. I think there are a lot of excitement in both of the worlds, and from time to time, my interest kind of it's like swinging from one side to the other. Even now, sometimes I feel like, oh, I have been working on too many application-related work, and I really want to, look into, more fundamental problems to solve some more fundamental problems. But sometimes, after, doing a little bit more like academia work, like writing papers, I also want to spend more time to, work on some real life problems. So I don't see a huge difference between these two worlds, at least in this domain. Computer science, machine learning, AI, the boundary is not that very, very clear. There's a lot of things that are very common in both of the worlds.
Okay, wonderful. So it's really nice to see a little bit background about you. So now Stephen will be your moderator. So I'm going to mute myself and really looking forward to your conversation.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Deng, and thank you for sharing a little more about yourself as well, Dr. Wang. So I'm just making sure we are pinned correctly. Okay. So the PEAAI has come up with some questions to ask you, and we also have some student questions. We have a decent amount of student questions actually, so we will get to as many student questions as we are able. But we're going to go ahead and start with some questions that we have come up for you. Tried to keep it as general as possible, given your very impressive technical background, but I know we're trying to broadly help as many students as possible who might not come from as technical backgrounds. Okay, so our first question. Students often worry that AI is replacing many traditional entry-level roles. From your perspective, how should early career candidates think about building a future-proof career in an AI-driven job market?
Yeah, I think this is probably a question on many people's mind, especially young people and the people who are graduating from schools. First of all, there's really, I don't think there's anything that is actually really future proof, because we just don't know what's going to happen, in a few years. Maybe we may not even be able to predict, to be honest, what's going to happen next year in 2026, for example. People are saying, a lot of people are saying, oh, in 2027, we are going to have AGI, and and things will change significantly. People don't need to have jobs, and they will have a life, and they will have financial support, and they don't need to work, and things like that. So it's really very, very difficult to say, I'm going to do something. I just want to work on something. I prepare myself, and I want to build a future-proof career. That's just not very, very realistic, right? So I think instead of worrying about AI is replacing you, I think we should focus more on how you can use AI to help yourself, right?
Absolutely wonderful.
Uh,
Are we having some technical
uh,
issues? Can you hear me, Dr. Wang?
uh,
We may be having some technical difficulties. We'll see if it fixes itself.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, Dr. Wang. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. We had gotten the most part of your answer to that question. I think where you started to cut out at the end, where you said it would just be too hard to future proof with how things rapidly are able to change, and it's unpredictability.
Yeah, it's just very difficult to focus on. Oh, I don't want to. I just want to develop some skills that are future proof. It's just hard to do that. So uh, my thinking is that instead of focusing on worrying about AI is going to replace entry-level jobs, maybe focusing on how you can use AI to help you, become more, sophisticated in communicating with AI to get help from AI, right? I think there's going to be a lot of people are saying, AI is going to elevate everybody's productivity, make everybody more productive, more smarter, and being able to solve more difficult problems. But the reality is those superstars will get much more help from AI than an average person, right? So the gap between a superstar and an average person is actually going to widen. That's going to be the reality. And then what defines a superstar here in this setting? One of the definitions is they can make a better use of AI. They can get more help from AI, while an average person is only getting average help from AI. So I think we should focus more on getting better of leveraging AI for whatever you want to do.
Absolutely. I appreciate that answer, especially thank you very much, as I am also someone who's entering the job market right now and trying to navigate and how AI factors into all of that. So I appreciate that answer very much. Thank you. So our next question, you've worked at major tech companies and led AI teams across organizations like Amazon, Meta, and Instacart. What skills or qualities consistently distinguish strong early career hires from the rest?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, of course, we are looking at the people with these basic skills, right? Some people are very, very good at writing code. Some people have good knowledge of, algorithms or AI or machine learning. But for really entry-level people, we are actually looking at something quite different. So the most important thing I feel is like whether they are reliable. Reliable for actually, small things. Like if they are given a task with a deadline, will they be able to deliver it by the deadline, right? And will they be mature enough to look into the problem and to come up with questions and get help by themselves and do all these kind of things to eventually get this thing done, right? We usually don't give an entry-level person a very, very, very difficult task. That's not going to happen. These, sorry, these are usually very, very small things. But, it's very, very important that, they are sort of like relentlessly reliable with these small things, right? And another very important skill is like they need to be able to communicate. They need to make unclear things clear, right? When they are given a task, there might be some kind of gap in understanding what they are asked to do. So how can they, make this task very, very clear to themselves, but also make sure people are on the same page. People are totally aligned, right? So what does success mean? Success here means, oh, you need to deliver X by date Y. This kind of clarity sometimes is just very, very simple, but sometimes it's kind of missing for earlier career people, right? And if I need to add another thing, it's maybe like we need to live in reality. This is not an ideal world. This is not like, we're not working on textbook problems. You're supposed to solve real problems, but there might be something, not very right about the input. You're not really getting the ideal situation. You need to like massage a lot of data, a lot of change the setting in a way so that the solving this problem becomes possible. So we need to live in reality. At the end of the day, like okay, this 3 months project or 3 weeks project, it doesn't matter. You don't wait until the end and tell other people, oh, I'm not able to solve this problem because X is not there, Y is not there, Z is not there. That's not going to work very well. Like if you have these kind of issues, first of all, you need to live in reality. Like you cannot really, just think like everything, will happen on its own. Like you have some dependencies on some other people's work. You need to make sure they actually happen. But this also tied to the thing I mentioned earlier, which is communication. You need to make unclear things clear and then be reliable. That's actually the most important thing that we are looking at, in these early career, people.
Right, and I very much so appreciate the emphasis on the reliability and the communication because I in my own personal experiences with trying to start my own career, I have found that the clearness of communication especially is key to trying to move along. For our next question, many students feel pressured to master everything: machine learning, cloud, software engineering, data science, etc. How can they strategically decide where to focus their learning and their specialization?
Yeah, we are definitely not looking for people who can do everything, right? Especially for a very junior candidates, we need to make sure, we want to make sure they can do basic things. They will be able to write code. They will be able to use, for example, GitHub, right? And with all 4 years of training, or people probably will be able to do these kind of basic things, right? But then, you really need to be good at one thing. For example, if you are interested in data science or machine learning or AI, you need to show that you are able to do these kind of things. But of course, machine learning, data science, and AI, these are very, very, very broad topics, right? When we interview our candidates, we're not expecting they know everything about the machine learning, about the AI, about the data science. We are only interested in knowing whether you know the basics, whether you know the foundations. So if you position yourself as, for example, a data scientist, but you cannot answer questions about, let's say, what is the most basic statistics problems, like what is the CLT, what is correlation, what is bias, what is variance. A lot of people failed to answer these very, very simple fundamental questions when they position themselves as data scientist, machine learning engineer, or know a lot of things about AI. Knowing things like RAG, knowing things like agentic, platforms, and all these kind of things, they are really not the things that we are looking for. We are looking for whether you have a basic understanding of math, statistics, and algorithms. So these are the things that are important.
Absolutely. I appreciate that answer. Thank you very much. For our next question, from a hiring standpoint, what does a standout project or portfolio piece look like today, especially with tools like large language models, making it easier to create quick prototypes?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. A lot of people feel like, oh, with large language models, with AI, with cursor that can help you write code, like a lot of problems have been solved. That there are not a lot, there are not many other things that you can do, or everybody can do these kind of things. But the reality is actually very, very different. For example, in my domain, like we are working on this vertical AI, where we're trying to use generative AI, large language models to, revolutionize how, the legal business is done, right? And this is an area that hasn't seen much automation at all. Before large language models, there's very, very little automation in this area. It's just because this area is more about paperwork, human interactions, and the traditional machine learning, natural language processing technologies are just not good enough for the type of structured data, unstructured data, and the human communication that this industry is all about, right? Yes, large language model make a huge difference. Generative AI make a huge difference. But on the other hand, these technologies are totally not reliable. You cannot rely on these kind of things to give you an end-to-end solution at all, right? So how do you create something that is useful by leveraging something that is totally unreliable? That is actually the biggest challenge, right? So this is also, related to a question. People are like, oh, do people still need to develop machine learning models? Because previously, for any specific problem you want to solve, you need to develop a specific machine learning model. Now it's just a prompt. Every problem is just, you don't need to develop a specific model. You just write a prompt. The large language model can solve the problem for you. But the gist of machine learning is, to be able to help you to, if you are a good machine learning person, you know how to handle things in the probabilistic world, how to handle things that are uncertain, right? And the large language model, generative AI, just added more uncertainty in your solutions. Everything is even more probabilistic. Like, how do you use your training, your expertise, your basic understanding of statistics and probabilities to solve these problems. So eventually you can actually build something reliable out of many, many unreliable components, right? So that is the really the challenge, like we need to address. And also, another very, very important thing, which is related to this, is you need to be able to tell a good story out of the things that you are working on, right? It's not like trying to create some unrealistic, just like a marketing type of thing. But instead, we need to live in the reality. Like if something, we are talking about solving a problem, every problem have different types of settings, have different type of constraints. Under some constraints, under some settings, this problem is not solvable. But under some other constraints, under some other settings, this problem is actually solvable, right? So how do we position ourselves? And and that also involves like the product work and everything, so that we are actually solving a solvable problem. That is the challenge.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. Yeah, I very much so appreciated um, the not I don't know if you use the term unreliability, but the how you said that the LLMs um, they unpredictable, I guess would be the better word in their
Mhm.
use. So I appreciate that emphasis as well. Thank you. Um, our next question: given your experience bridging research and industry, what advice do you have for students who are trying to decide between pursuing graduate school, entering the industry immediately, or maybe exploring a hybrid research path?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Uh, Pursuing graduate school can, you can have different goals, right? One is you want to go all the way to the end. You want to do a PhD and get into academia, do a lot of research, and promoting fundamental science and all these kind of things. That's one path. Another path, getting to the graduate school, is like you want to be more, you want to develop more skill sets in a particular area. For example, machine learning. Maybe all the machine learning courses that in the undergraduate program are not like complete enough or sophisticated enough for the current industrial world, right? So you might want to get into the graduate school to develop more skills for yourself, so that you are you have more opportunities on the job market. That could be the second goal. And also, you don't have to go to graduate school. A lot of people can find jobs after undergraduate studies, and they can learn a lot of things on the job. That's also a very good possibility. But I think I don't feel like there are fundamental differences between the second option and the third option. But the first one, if you are considering, really getting into research, getting into academia, and doing some very long-term, work, then you really need to make sure that this is the thing that really interests you. Are you interested in reading papers? Are you interested in, thinking about, these long-term goals, these visions, and what are the things going to happen in the, not just the next year, but 5 years or 10 years down the road? Are you interested? Do you enjoy working with a lot of people in academia? Attending conferences, brainstorming ideas, and help educate the younger generation of the people, right? So these are the, you need to ask yourself whether you are really interested in this. But on the other hand, academia life and the industrial life will be very different. One very big difference that a lot of people don't talk about it is actually accountability, right? In industry, there's much more accountability than in academia. That may be one of the reasons why people in industry are paid higher than people in academia. Because in industry, you have quarterly goals, you have goals every 6 months, every year, you need to deliver the results. In academia, that kind of accountability is much less. Like, you can do some kind of research work and, doesn't really matter it is practical or not. But because, not saying that you are not doing useful work, it could be very useful down the road, but it's just very difficult to judge whether it is useful or not in a short period of time. But whether you succeed or fail, at least for the short period of time, does not really matter that much. On the other hand, of course, if you think of your life, your career, that actually matters a lot. If you really want to be, very successful in your career, whether you are in academia or in industry. But at least for the short term, these are the differences. If you want to make things happen in the real world, especially AI is making such fast, advancement in recent years. There's a lot of excitement in industry, in real world. But we also need brilliant people to think about hard problems, for the future. And academia is the best place to do that.
And I very much appreciate the differences that you've drawn between the life in academia versus the life in the industry, as well as the focus on choosing something that is important to you, especially when it's going to be something that evolves over the long term. So for our next question, you've built and managed teams across multiple high-impact AI products. What common gaps do you see in new graduates' preparation, technical or non-technical, that universities could better address?
Yeah, I think I mentioned something, early on. I think, I started my undergraduate in computer science many years ago. I did undergraduate, master degree, and then PhD. At that time, computer science is very different from computer science today, right? I think one of the biggest difference is like for computer science, we don't really need much knowledge about the probability or statistics, these kind of things. But now, almost the entire computer science has become, artificial intelligence, become, machine learning, and then, things like statistics and probability and, linear algebra, like matrix these type of things have become so important. And these are the things, these things were not even in the curriculum, many years ago in the majority of the computer science program. So today, I think, these are the things like, if you really want to do very, very well, I think math, statistics, linear algebra, these type of things are still very, very important if you want to get into AI, machine learning, data science, and all these kind of things. But this is just one type of skill sets. People, we are looking for people with many, many different types of skill sets. So one thing I want to mention is like, you want to think about the products. Like how do you build something that people will use? What is the product? What does the product look like, right? What does success mean for a particular product? What metric actually matters for a particular product? This is the type of thinking, like that is very, very important in the industry. And usually, it takes new people actually several years to get used to that kind of thinking. The product thinking, the metrics. What does success mean? How do you measure success? These are the things that are super, super important, right? And then, another thing is really important. I'm not sure like people get sufficient training in school is actually communication, right? I've known several companies started to interview candidates in a very, very different way than the usual types of interview, like asking you to write some code or solve some problems. Instead, they ask you to come up with a document. They give you a question. They ask you to come up with a document, right? Of course, you can ask a large language model to write documents for you, but what we are looking for is the ideas that you have in the document, right? So the ability to be able to communicate is going to become more and more important in this AI-driven world. Like to a certain extent, like we even need to learn how to communicate with AI, right? So that is prompt engineering. A good prompt is very, very, makes a huge difference from a bad prompt. But that is communicating with AI. But the communicating with people, with people of other engineers, with product people, with people who are doing customer support, or communicating directly with customers. This is really becoming more and more important in this AI world, right? And communication also means the ability to explain things. Like if you are a technical person, how do you explain what you are trying to do to someone who is not a technical person, right? Even to your maybe to the CEO of a company who is not a technical person. How do you explain things to him so that he can appreciate and he understand, he know what are difficult, what are easy things to do, right? So a lot of things will be really built upon these communication skills, both written communication and oral communication. That's going to be super important.
And I appreciate that answer. Thank you. The importance of communication definitely seems like something that is reoccurring in this conversation. And I especially like how you pointed out the need to be able to strongly communicate to people who might not be as technical, but also that you need to be able to know how to communicate with AI properly as well, because a lot of AIs, they're not going to be able to accomplish exactly what's in your head. You have to be able to translate it well enough for the AI to understand exactly what it is you're trying to accomplish. So I appreciate that framework. Thank you. So for our next question, networking can feel intimidating for students who don't already have existing connections in tech. What are practical ways a student can authentically build relationships and visibility in the AI and the engineering community?
Yes, that is a very, very good question. When we, look at candidates, we are really trying to find out more information about this person, right? The CV usually does not really provide a lot of information. And people use AI to polish their CVs. So at the end of the day, a lot of CVs look very, very much alike, especially for very junior people, right? So one thing we are looking into is like what kind of project this person has done before, right? Does he have a blog? Has he published some thoughts or experience or the lessons that he has learned during in his past work with the technology? We're just trying to get as much information as possible about this person, right? And there are very, very limited sources that we can look into. CV is one of them. Your LinkedIn page is another. And if you have a blog piece, if you posted quite a lot of information on LinkedIn or other social network or things like that, that will be really, really helpful. But fundamentally, we want to know, what kind of ideas you have, like, what are the things that you have been thinking about, and things like that. We're not particularly interested in, whether you have a specific piece of knowledge or whether has done a particular project, but rather we're trying to understand how do you solve a problem? What are the problems you are looking into, and how do you solve this problem, right? And fundamentally, when we evaluate candidates, we are trying to figure out whether this person is able to make good decisions in solving all kinds of problems. And to be honest, your entire career is actually about improving your skills in making better and better decisions. At the beginning for yourself, and later on for your team, and that's how a person becomes more and more successful in their career. How do you solve your problem? And can you provide some kind of evidence to show, you are thoughtful and you are thinking of the problems and you have the right way of approaching the problems and solving these problems. So these are the things that are important.
Thank you very much for that perspective as well. It's definitely insightful. For our next question, we might be able to finish off the rest of our questions before we get to the student questions. For our next question, with AI tools becoming accessible to everyone, how can students responsibly use AI during job applications? Like, for example, for resume writing, interview practice, or technical prep without crossing any ethical boundaries?
Yeah, I think one thing, we have seen many, many times are people who are using AI in real time to help them, answer the questions from the, interviewers. Uh, my suggestion is please do not do that. Because for one thing, it's very, very easy to tell. Usually, it's so obvious, and even some people can will be able to answer like one or two questions without being detected, but eventually it's still very, very easy to tell. So do not use, AI or large language model or whatever, to help you answer questions in real time. But otherwise, by all means, use AI, large language models to polish your CV. And, if you write a blog, use large language model to help, you write a nice blog and all these kind of things. That's, and also like everybody is using AI to help writing code. So, I don't object to people to use AI in helping them writing code. As long as you have the understanding with the people who are interviewing you, that's totally not the problem. However, I think I want to mention one thing, which is really we need to get better. Everybody of us, every one of us needs to get better in using AI. So it's not like you have access to ChatGPT and you are suddenly much, much better. That's not the case. I have seen many, many people who are good writers and they become even better writers after using ChatGPT. But I have seen many people who are not so good writers. Unfortunately, ChatGPT does not help them that much. What is the reason? The reason that you are a good writer uh, is not just like you can write better sentences or better paragraphs and all things like that. If you are a better writer, it means you have a skill to tell a good writing from a bad writing. That is a very fundamental skill. Whether this sentence is a good sentence or a bad sentence, a good writer has a much better sense than an average writer, right? So if you are working with ChatGPT or working with AI, ChatGPT and AI are just providing you with a lot of options of writing one sentence or one paragraph or one article. But if you don't have the sense which one sentence or paragraph is actually a better sentence or a better paragraph, then the help you get from ChatGPT of this AI is still limited. But a good writer who already has the capability to judge a good sentence from a bad sentence, apparently he will get much better help. So this also happens, this is also the same, like with writing code or, using AI to help you to do any kind of thing. Fundamentally, you need to have the judgment, right? And having that judgment, that is the most important skill sets. So, my suggestion is like we all need to improve ourselves in working with the AI, in getting help from AI. It's not like, the AI is there, everybody gets the same amount of help. That's not the case.
And I very much appreciate how you've talked about. I think it puts emphasis on the fact that we say AI tool, right? And I think that puts emphasis on the tool part, where if you have the AI do the work for you, then you're not growing as an individual. You're not learning from it yourself. And I really appreciate the good writing versus the bad writing scenario, because I actually I consider myself at least a decent writer. So I just appreciated that scenario where it's like the fundamental importance there is knowing how to identify that what would be considered good writing versus what would be considered bad writing, which someone who is bad at writing might not already be familiar with. So an AI tool isn't necessarily going to help. I appreciate that. Thank you. For our next question, what advice would you give students who feel what advice would you give students who feel discouraged by news of tech layoffs, hiring freezes, or increased job competition? And how do you personally think? What do you personally think about navigating uncertain job markets?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are talking about this, and a lot of companies, big companies, they are hiring much fewer people, especially junior people. And also there's restructuring and a lot of people are let go and all these kind of things. Well, we cannot control the job market. Like we cannot control what happens across the board, like our economy or things like that. The only thing we can control is what do we do, like individually. How can we do better, right? I remember many years ago when I was still a student in graduate school. There are people who are working, studying electrical engineering, double E, and computer science. There are also people who are studying, math, right, PhD. Then, there's also a question like, it's much more difficult for a math PhD to get a job than a computer science PhD. So we ask those math professors, what do they think about this, right? And the answer is like, you know, uh, you you will always be able to get a job if you are good. So it doesn't really matter, the overall, how does the job market look like and all these kind of things. As long as you are good, you will be able to get a job. And then the question is like, how do you, how do you improve yourself, or how do you, get better? And we have talked about so many things, in the previous questions, right? You need to have some kind of fundamental skill sets. You need to, pay a lot of attention to the foundations. Don't chase, these trends of, ChatGPT or Gemini or Anthropic, and one model after another model. Today we are talking about the RAG. Tomorrow we are talking about, contextual, modeling and the knowledge base and all these kind of things. The question here is, do you know the fundamentals? Do you have a solid foundation in math, statistics, and data structure and computer science and all these kind of things? Are you able to get hands dirty? Are you able to build things very very fast, and things like that? And also communication. Are you able to communicate? Right. So if you have these kind of things, and I don't feel like these kind of things are hard to, develop, for even average college student, these are not the things that are very, very difficult to develop. So as long as you improve yourself on these kind of things, I think there are endless opportunities in the job market. Yes, today, there are layoffs, there are many, many candidates, people on the job market, then there are positions available. But I also want to tell you, it's like there's also a lot of noises in the job market. A lot of people, they don't have the proper training. They position themselves as machine learning engineer, data scientist, or whatever, right? So we are looking for people who really, really have the skills. And I think a lot of college students with proper training and self-improvement and all these kind of things, they can stand out. They can, stand out, given even there's so much noise in the job market. So improving yourself is important, and I'm quite sure there are lots of opportunities, there are lots of jobs out there.
Great. Thank you very much for that answer. And now, just for time's sake, I'm going to go ahead and transition to submitted student questions. I will also say I apologize ahead of time if for some reason the student name I attached to a question is not correct and is not the actual student. I believe everything should be fine, but we had a slight issue with the Microsoft form. But okay, we'll go ahead and start with the student questions. So this question, I believe, is from submitter Elaine. And it is, as AI systems begin to assist lawyers and clinicians, what skills or technical foundations should students focus on if they want to work on AI for legal or medical applications? And if you need that repeated for you, just let me know.
Yeah, I think we are handling very, very challenging problems here, right? Fundamentally, there are two, foundational problems. One is document understanding. Every legal case can easily have like hundreds or thousands of legal and medical pages and insurance page, documents and all these kind of things. Like, how do you understand a large amount of unstructured data? It is not a solved problem at all, right? So that's problem number one. Problem number two is document generation. How do you generate a new document that can use all the facts that you have from the understanding of the case files, and then the generated document also conform with the style and the tones and all these kind of constraints in the legal industry or in the medical industry, right? So that is another very, very big challenge. It's not a solved problem, right? And previously, I said that this legal industry hasn't been automated before at all. What does that mean? It means in the legal industry, everything is based on paperwork, right? You have really, really a lot of drawers containing thousands of pages for every case and all these kind of things. This is how this industry work. Now, suddenly, if all these data become structured data, become data in the computer systems, then they are going to drive a lot of new applications that the legal industry hasn't thought about in so long, have in the entire history, right? We'll be able to optimize a legal case, really, in a very, very fundamental and in a very, very novel way. Really help those victims and also help these legal firms to, for example, how do we reduce the lifespan of a legal case from 5 years to 3 years or to even to 1 year, right? How do we make sure the victims get as much as help as possible? All these kind of things. So there are really, really lots of things that we need to do, and we need a lot of people with proper training in data science, machine learning, computer science, or even back-end engineering to help solve these problems.
Absolutely. Thank you. Our next student question, I believe, I apologize if I am mispronouncing your name. I believe this is from a student, Reshma, whose question is, I understand that we can use AI to supplement our work, such as drafting emails, generating summaries, looking for jobs, etc. However, I am concerned that outsourcing our actual thinking, summarizing, brainstorming, etc. skills to AI will lead us to use our brains less and in the long term lead to mental degeneration. In your personal view, how can we avoid this?
We're thinking about too many things, like the human mind, right? There's definitely a cognition overload. um, you know uh, so getting help from these AI is definitely something very, very very, very useful, right? Can you imagine like driving without GPS anymore, like without a Google Map in your car anymore? Do you really want to make sure that your mind is not being, like I don't know, like is not degenerating because you use Google Map? Nobody will think about that. right? Because this is just a tool for us to, get from A to B. Like I really cannot imagine like how people drive without these kind of help. But yes, we saved a lot of cognition overload in these kind of tasks. But fundamentally, we want to use our cognition, like our ideas, our mind in the right place, in the place that actually make a difference, right? Thinking about like instead of writing code, writing in creative writing, you want to write an essay, or even if you just want to write a paragraph, how do you make this paragraph like really, really creative? It's very difficult. No large language model or AI can do this job right now. Like, can write a meaningful, like, engaging and surprising and also plausible story at this point, right? But we're not writers. We're not writing stories. But we are solving a lot of problems, and we need solutions. We can always ask large language models to give us, suggestions or give us options. But like I said before, we need our own judgment to make sure, like, this is something that it's something that we want, right? And another very important thing is like, do you know what question to ask to the large language model? Everybody has access to ChatGPT, but when we are doing creative work, we are asking different questions, right? A lot of creativity is in the question that we formulate. Someone who has a lot of ideas, who has a lot of insights, will be able to ask more interesting questions than people who do not really have a lot of ideas, and they ended up coming, creating something really, really general, very, very general, very, very vague, that do not have a lot of insights and ideas. So I think AI will help us, to put our, cognition or whatever effort in the right place, in the place that actually will make a difference. And we should liberate ourselves from this routine work, and then invest our effort in places that make a difference.
I think that answer was very insightful as well. Thank you for that. Just because of time, I think this will probably end up being our last question. But this is from a student. Again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, but this is from a student, Sagnik, who says, how does an organization handle the automation complacency that comes from fully trusting AI that can still make mistakes, especially in extremely sensitive fields like legal and health? And then they go on to ask, what about the disclosure of the use of AI to clients?
Right. So, as I mentioned very early on, although like large language model and generative AI have become a driving force behind the automation of this field, they are still very, very unreliable. And apparently we cannot really trust them, as is, and we have to do a lot of evaluation. So evaluating the quality of large language model and the generative AI output is actually one of the biggest challenges we are facing today, right? So just one thing, like we are generating a lot of documents, using AI, but everything that we generate will provide a citation or reference to the original document, from where we actually make this statement, right? So it's quite easy for humans and also for machines to go back and check whether this this is something that valid, or this is actually hallucination, right? So there's a lot of work like this that will, help us make sure that this is real, this is right. And we also have people in the loop. It's not like everything is automated. We have people in the loop to double check the results. And we also use, the alignment, like the human feedback to help improve our models in many, many different ways. So we're able to get better and better, but that does not mean, we are going to kick humans completely outside our system. That's not the case. We just want to make sure we understand where should the humans look into for very, very complex, very complex results, right? And also, it's not just the things on our side. We deliver our results to the legal firms, and the legal firms will work with, for example, third parties or insurance companies. They will have a lot more people in the loop to make sure that the results we are generating are actually, factual, truthful, instead of, hallucination, right? I think this is the reality we are living in. AI is really powerful, but not just in legal or in medical, in healthcare, in almost every area, we want to make sure that we are not being misled in using AI, and a lot of technology needs to be developed to help ensure that.
Fantastic. And I just want to take a second to thank you very much for this conversation, Dr. Wang. I very much so have appreciated this conversation over the last hour, and I very much appreciate you joining us for our webinar today. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Nice talking to you. Thank you.